Welcome to the Workology podcast, where we discuss the science and art of the workplace, gain powerful insights, resources, and perspectives on the industries of human resources and recruiting. Join your host, Jessica Miller-Merrill, chief blogger at bloggingforjobs.com, for an in-depth and no-holds-barred look into the future of our most powerful business asset, the employee. We do want to caution that today's episode contains some strong language that some listeners might find offensive and is inappropriate for young children. And now, welcome your host, Jessica, with this podcast episode of Workology.
Gen Z, short for Gen Zen, with their age range between 2 and 19, they are some of the most interesting and different groups of generations that we've had thus far. Gen Z is the most diverse and multicultural generation in the U.S. 55% are Caucasian, 24% are Hispanic, 14% are African American, and 4% are Asian, according to AdAge stats published earlier this year. As part of our 5 Generations at Work series here on the podcast, we're taking a look at Generation Z. And so I am going to be talking about the future of Gen Z, what they want at work. And so today I am joined by Connor Blakely. Connor is a serial entrepreneur, advisor, speaker, and youth marketing and branding strategist who has been recognized by Forbes as well as Startup Grind. Connor is 16 years old. So he's your future leader at your organization, employee that you're going to be looking to recruit, and I'm excited to have him on the podcast. Connor, welcome to the Workology podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be on.
Awesome. Is there anything else you want to add, like projects you're working on or something about you?
Nothing particularly. One thing that I would just ask is if anyone has any questions, comments, wants to connect in any way, I'm happy to help or bring value. So just follow me on Twitter. My DMs are open. Shoot me a tweet, whatever.
Awesome. They might want to email you. So we'll have to think about that too, since I think as much as I love Twitter, not always is everyone on the Twitters.
My email is, my email's on my Twitter bio. My email is Blakely. Actually, if you go to my website, connorblakely.com, that should have all my contact information as well as bio and all of that stuff.
Awesome. And we'll link to that at the end of on the transcript of the podcast. So let's talk a little bit about Gen Z. Tell me what you guys are all about.
Yeah, so as you were saying, Gen Z age range is 2 to 19 years old. Gen Z, they don't necessarily believe in this American dream that a lot of the other generations believe in, and here's why. Gen Z lived through a recession. They saw the recession, how it affected their parents. They live in the negative stereotypes of millennials. They've seen terrorist attacks around the world. They've lived through wars. They're not as outgoing and risk-taking as millennials. They're very reserved and safe. They do have a perspective, but here's what's super interesting. Millennials, they didn't grow up with all the technology, but they did just have a computer in their house. So I like to say that millennials embraced technology, but here's what's amazing about Gen Z. Gen Z is the first generation that didn't embrace technology. They're the first digital natives. So Gen Z, they don't know a world without the barrier to technology being so low, which is so amazing. And millennials were known as the on-demand, entitled me generation as far as customer service and things of that nature. But Gen Z is known as, hey, give me the technology and let me problem solve and figure it out myself to get the best possible outcome for everyone. They do have some parallels to millennials as well as some of the other generations, but you can't put them in. They're on an entirely different playing field. It's super interesting to watch some of these company cultures and see how it's playing out.
Well, I'm taking notes. I have a 7-year-old, so while 16 is very different than a 7-year-old, you still are part of the same generation and are growing up with this technology literally in the palm of their hands, of your hand, from the point of birth.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about leadership styles and business settings. Like, what are you hearing from peers and clients that you're working with? Is there a certain leadership style or business setting that Gen Z prefers?
Here's what's funny. A lot of the time you'd expect, since we are the first digital native generation, you'd think, oh, like, let's just text, let's have a phone call, stuff like that. But what I found is meetings, in-person communication, and data shows, it's not only more effective, but it's also timely. You know what I mean? Like, they'd rather spend the time meeting with you in person for 2 to 3, maybe 5 minutes, discussing an issue that could have been up to 10 emails. So as being digital natives, they understand where at some points in the workforce they need to take a step back and say, hold on, person-to-person communication might be more valuable in this instance. Not saying that they utilize things like Slack, text messaging, phone calls, emails, the typical stuff, but a lot of the times they prefer to actually meet in person for super short increments rather than email.
I think that's an important distinction to make, is that in-person contact is very important, not like we would much assume, where, you're just got your head in front of a screen.
Yeah, I know. I mean, one thing I spent last year, I spent a day, I think 3 days at VaynerMedia, and one thing that they've implemented is, in the workforce, you can sit where you want, you can lay down, you can bring your lap, you can do whatever as long as you're getting shit done, right? And not only that, but they were honestly the first company that I saw implement like the real 5-minute meeting method. And to be honest with you, in the next couple of years, I think that in the workforce, it might diminish email within a significant amount within the company, because just the value of that 5-minute meeting, other than the time wasted on correspondence, typing, making sure in the workforce you're being quote unquote politically correct and you're getting your message across. It just saves so much time. And I mean, they say 90% of communication is nonverbal. Well, in an in-person meeting, not only are you getting your points across, but you're also like feeling what the other person's thoughts are, what they're like, you know what I mean? You can just tell. And I think that kind of methodology just gravitates towards the way Gen Z does things.
That makes for interesting challenges when you're consulting clients in the branding and Gen Z marketing space, if they prefer this face-to-face communication. It's not just simply an ad placed on Facebook or a Snapchat campaign.
Yes, I 100% agree.
Well, let's talk a little bit about you, and you're reaching towards high school graduation and then maybe looking at college. What do you want from your future employer if you choose to go into the corporate world or the business world?
I promise you, I will never be in the corporate world. I would suffocate under that infrastructure. I don't even want to think about it. You have a better chance thinking about Shaq running a marathon than me joining the workforce. But I can definitely attest to the data on what my peers and people I'm surrounding myself with are saying, and the kinds of companies that data shows from like polls and different studies, as well as like just me knowing what my peers are thinking, is they're looking at the opportunity to be a part of something special, as well as opportunities to advance. I do think that these are the parallels to the millennial generation on this side of things. They'd rather take a cut in pay and join something truly meaningful to them and have an opportunity to scale with the company, A, and B, scale their own position, both position-wise and monetary, inside of the company in order to have a greater impact. I think for employers, the thing that it comes down to in all of this is impact. An impact on their own life, an impact on the company, an impact on the relationships. I think that's the one word it comes down to with Gen Z in the workforce is impact, and how the company can give Gen Z the tools inside and outside of the company. Because believe it or not, people are passionate about other things than what they do. So I think also a huge trend in the upcoming years is going to be what companies can do for their workforce to not only succeed inside the company, but follow their passions outside of the company. So I think that's going to be huge as well.
Interesting. Well, when you're mentioning and you're talking about scalability and unique opportunities and growth, that really sounds to me like a startup culture or a high
Yep.
growth. So, what do you say to employers that might be part of the Fortune 200 that are looking at in the coming years to attract the Generation Z workforce? Are they out of luck, or can they do some things to try to gain their interest?
Here's what I think. I think that Gen Z, I've actually never really talked about this before, and it's something that I've been thinking a lot over the last couple of days. And after doing some research, I realized something like these companies that want to attract Gen Z as the first digital natives are the ones who've been marketing to them and talking at them. So in a lot of ways, these Fortune 200 companies have fucked up their relationship with Gen Z just based on previous interactions, right? Because a lot of their marketing strategies, when Gen Z was first getting on these social platforms, was talk at them, talk at them, talk at them, sell, sell, sell. You know what I mean? So they don't feel like it's a relationship. They feel like it's a one-way talking path for the brand to talk to them. So I feel like as we age up and we start to enter this Fortune 200 workforce, a lot of these companies and a lot of the Fortune 200s are super slow to innovate. So those actually, unless they're high-paying jobs, might not be super, super attractive to Gen Z. So what I think they're going to have to do is find ways in the company culture to innovate it out to make it way more attractive. And you hear a lot about what people are doing with millennials and like unlimited vacation, stuff like that. To be honest with you, that is not going to be as much of a factor with Gen Z. Like I said, they've lived through that recession. They hate living in the shadow of millennials and all of those stereotypes. So they're the kind to just get to work, grind, and hustle it out. So I think a lot of these things that are making job offers to millennials super, super attractive aren't necessarily as important to Gen Z. So I think that the company itself, the company's moral responsibility, their actions, the people within the company, their opportunities for personal growth. And of course, there's always those fun, unique opportunities within the company, like potentially like the free vacation stuff, like the speakers, the opportunities to travel, stuff like that. I mean, you can't curate a meaningful and impactful company culture that is conducive to Gen Z without that. But I just think that a lot of the things that these companies did to cater to millennials, they're going to take a step back and be like, shit, we actually don't have to do this for Gen Z. I genuinely believe Gen Z is going to be A, the most entrepreneurial workforce ever, and B, the easiest. And when I say easy, I mean easy to please. It's scary the amount of things that these companies can do to engage and retain Gen Z. I think that, of course, there's not enough data out on it to prove these theories because the oldest people in this generation are 19. But I'm telling you, in the next 6 to 7 years, these are the things that can change a company.
Exciting. We've heard it first here because there is not a lot of information about this, and I've about the Generation Z workforce, and I talked to a lot of restaurants and hospitality and retail companies that are hiring in part-time workers, summer workers that happen to be in the Gen Z range. So we need to take folks like you and then these other businesses who are currently hiring and really listen and then build your own recruitment and employment branding strategies from these kinds of conversations.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that, like I was saying before, like, I think the way that brands can attract Gen Z best is positioning themselves facing the consumer, right? So, how they market to their potential employee's sister is going to determine how that employee decides if they're going to take the job or not. And I truly believe that because as content marketing, Seth Godin said, is the only kind of marketing that's going to survive. And I disagree with that on some levels, but on some level, a light bulb turns on, and I'm like, that content's the only way that they're going to, content engaging, the only two ways that these brands are going to be able to create the relationship with them. So if there's no relationship at all, and they already have a relationship with other Fortune 200 companies from a consumer level, then why would they be preempted to go join a company that they already don't have a relationship with? And you're not going to find data on this because Gen Z is, like I was saying, is the first generation to, like, this is not being talked about enough. Gen Z, let me repeat it, Gen Z is the first generation to ever walk the face of the earth and has never not had the ability to borrow their parents' iPhone if they don't have one. The barrier to entry to information and technology is so low, it is almost scary. And from a consumer-facing level, I mean, 80% of Gen Z researches before they purchase a product online. So if you don't think that Gen Z is going to do that when they go get a job, if they already don't have a relationship and good vibes with the company, then there's no way that they're going to work for you. And if they do work for you, then A, they're going to do a really, really bad job. They're not going to care. They're not going to be motivated or inspired. Or B, they're going to leave because they're going to find a better opportunity with a company that they have a relationship with.
80% of Gen Z researches brands. It will be interesting to see how they are researching employers with Glassdoor and Indeed and these other sites as employment branding starts to grow. Well, let's take a little bit of a reset here. This is Jessica Miller-Merrill, and you're listening to the Workology podcast powered by Blogging for Jobs. Today's topic is part of our ongoing series on the 5 generations at work. So today we're looking at Gen Zen, and I have Connor Blakely here, and you can follow Connor on Twitter at Blakely Speaks, and that's BLAKLEY Speaks. Awesome. So let's get back to it. So when I looked at your website and your resume, and as we have met at South by and we're talking, I was really impressed because you have worked with companies including, and I'm going to list all these here, Microsoft, 3M, 7-Eleven, Unilever, Toyota, L'Oreal, and you're helping them effectively market to Gen Z. What can recruiters and companies do to attract Gen Z? Is there any secret sauce that you would say to these guys who you've worked with, some other things that they're able to accomplish?
Yeah, I mean, I talked a little bit about the impact before and how that could potentially bring the help the ease the potential employee's decision to come to the company, right? Impact in all facets of the lifestyle. I think that the next word that needs to start to be talked about and have a dialogue created around is A, perspective, and B, authenticity. And authenticity is in a lot of ways perceived as a corny word like, oh, when you're marketing, you have to be authentic. But I swear by it. And here's why, especially for these companies. You look at companies like Abercrombie and Fitch, right? The reason that their company has went down the toilet in the past 3 years is because they're putting out a perfect lifestyle, right? When they market, how do they market, right? They have the most beautiful models on perfect scenarios, on beaches, like their store smells awesome, they have perfect pictures, like they're painting a perfect picture, right? And literally they only hire employees that they deem look right, even though that they say they don't. I've had like friends who've been asked to work there, like in store, I've been asked to work there. And like, I don't know, it's just really weird, the vibe. No wonder the company sucks. But that, like I was saying before, Gen Z has lived through the recession, wars, terrorist attacks. Like we have all these values. We're not like we have the best bullshit meter ever exist because of the fact that we're digital natives and the technology that we have access to, right? So we know that it's not a perfect world. So brands can't position themselves as a perfect company. And it sounds bad because when you want to recruit talent, you want to position like that you are the best possible fit. But I truly believe the brand that says no to an employee because they don't think they're a right fit and says, hey, go work here, you'd be a good fit here, is the company that's going to win. Not just on that, but on several other levels, saying like, hey, here's what we can do for you, but also here's what we can't. Here's the realistic approach to how you need to be at this company and what you need to do to scale at this company. So giving realistic expectations up front, allowing them to make the best possible decision for their life in order to have the most impact in all facets.
Do you think that authenticity is in the form of recruiters or hiring managers giving feedback to candidates that don't get the job or aren't offered? Because at present, most employers don't do that.
Yes, I 100% believe that. I mean, like the thing that's being practiced with Gen Z right now is if we suck, tell us. Because we can get better and learn from the failure. In the world around us that we've grown up in, all we've seen is people not learning from failure. The one character trait that I love about this generation so much is the fact that we learn from failure. We realize the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, right? We finally, I think that we'll be the first generation to break that chain. It's going to be really, really interesting to see how it plays out.
All right, here's your opportunity to step onto your soapbox and talk to us about your biggest pet peeve or stereotype when it comes to Gen Z that you're hearing or that you want to address.
We are not like millennials. Stop saying that we are like millennials. We are not. We are not entitled. We are not spoiled. We are not me, me, me. All we want to do is help and give value. If I see millennial and Gen Z being compared ever again, I will find your name and email you because you are 100% wrong and you should just quit whatever you're doing. It makes me so mad because the more that goes out about how Gen Z and millennials are the same, brands are going to continue to mess up.
Good advice. Good advice. Oh, well, let's talk about social media platforms. What social media platform or platforms have your attention right now?
It's funny because I know Carlos too, and
Yeah.
he's all over the Snapchat, and let me tell you, he's 100% right. Snapchat right now can be used as a recruiting tool in so many different ways. Uh, just honestly highlighting the company culture. This is the only company I have on Snapchat, and it's the only one I need to see what it's supposed to be like. Everyone go add on Snapchat VaynerMedia. They have employees take over their Snapchat to give future prospective A clients and B potential employees insight into what their day to day is, and they change position every single day. And not only that, sometimes they'll have Gary come on and stuff like that. That is what needs to be done. And the reason Gen Z is on the platform in the first place is because of all the values I was talking about to begin with, like authenticity. Like no one is being marketed to on Snapchat. And well, they are, but it doesn't feel like it because all of the advertising is integrated into the platform. And the stories and the ability to send a Snapchat direct to a person, they're only 10 seconds long, right? So what you'll hear a lot of people say is Snapchat's awesome because it appeals to the 6 to 8 second attention filter that Gen Z has because they have the attention span worse than a goldfish. To that I call bullshit, and here's why. It's because we don't have an attention span problem. We have a content filtering phenomenon. You know what I mean? We decide in those 6 to 8 seconds if what you're saying is worthy of hearing. So it's your job, not mine, to figure out what's compelling enough to keep my attention. When Gen Z gets super focused on something and they deem it worthy of their time, because Gen Z realizes time is the asset, they will consume it for minutes and minutes and minutes, and potentially hours if they feel like it's worth their time.
So for those of you who aren't on Snapchat, and I am on Snapchat, and I'm trying to use it every day in my daily life.
What's your handle? What's your handle? Plug yourself right now.
It's J Miller Merrill, so just like my Twitter. But I just want to address folks that are like, I can't figure it out. So if somebody is grabbing or taking over an account, that means that VaynerMedia is handing over their user ID and password to a different employee every day to snap a day in the life at that company. And that's a scary thing for human resources and business professionals out there, because what if somebody says something inappropriate or takes a picture or shares information that is protected? Like what's the thought on that?
Nobody's gonna share information that's protected, and if you're that close-minded about doing it, then I know you're playing devil's advocate right now, of course. But like, if you're like that against or scared, like, don't get on the platform, because all that's saying to all of your potential employees is that you're too dumb enough to innovate and not meet Gen Z where they're at instead of where you want them to be. And I think that if you're worried about that, then don't get on the platform. But if you're truly interested, then you need to realize that any employee that you hire is going to be smart enough not to leak the information. But what was the first thing you mentioned before the information?
Well, inappropriate pictures.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, like, the thing with Gen Z is, like, we don't care in a lot of ways about political correctness. That's why you see Gen Z, like, rising up and supporting Donald Trump in so many ways, is because he says it how it is. Like, he doesn't cut around the corner and, like, use all the fancy words that need to be said in order to, like, make it a good talk and make it presentable. No, like, he was like, just a quick example, like, we need build a wall. Super, super, like, cliche and in a lot of ways unrealistic. I'm not trying to get political, but this is just a good example. He's like, literally build a wall, keep out these people. Okay, super transparent, to the point. Although controversial and unreasonable in a lot of ways, we respect that because it's authentic, and like, he's respecting our time. Here's the reason why we love political incorrectness so much, is because time is the asset, and if you're going around the bush and all that stuff, then you're just being irresponsible with our time at this point. And then that's why we're not going to consume or listen to what you have to say anymore. So that's the reason Gen Z doesn't really care about political incorrectness. And VaynerMedia has freaking beer cans all over their offices, like, and I promise you, they are probably the number one company as far as a marketing agency that people want to work for in the country right now, just based on the culture, Gary, like, all of that stuff. And after going and after seeing this stuff, like, I've seen a lot of company cultures, like, really pay attention to what's going on there from a human resources standpoint. And if anyone has any questions, just, again, feel free to tweet me, but really, really dig in. This is super important what's going on.
Snapchat is, like we're saying, is a platform where Generation Z is spending their time. And you've outlined impact, authenticity, and being time sensitive are the three most important factors to be able to engage our brand.
Not time sensitive, but responsible with the time.
So those three areas are things that we need to really consider when we're building our recruitment, marketing, and engagement strategies. And I think Snapchat is a great place to experiment a little bit and do a little bit of research and recon.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I mean, what HR is down to the core is marketing. You're selling your company. Well, I guess one prong of HR, because, I mean, you have to actually hire good people, right? You just can't have anyone come in. But a lot of what HR is marketing. And a lot of what marketing is storytelling. So what better place to tell a story than where you can get really, really creative and come up with some badass content, as well as where everyone's attention is. So if you combine those two things, I mean, in essence, HR is just marketing to the right people. So you need to pay attention to the platforms where you can do that effectively, and then just execute. And then just execute from there. And you need to cross promote across your other platforms to drive traffic to your Snapchat, because it doesn't have a natural discovery other than phone contact list. So if you're going to go all in, because you don't just go half in on Snapchat, don't just BS Snapchat. If you're going to do it, you need to go hard at it, because that's really going to pay off in the long run. Worst case scenario, you try it, it doesn't work. And then, like, you just learn from it and then just on to the next one, right? But spend the time, spend the sweat equity learning, becoming a master at it, and it will pay off. No other social media platform has grown as fast as Snapchat. Not even Facebook. Not even Facebook has. Over the initial 6-month period, no one has grown as fast. It's scary the amount of potential that's on this platform. So I was watching a TED Talk by Adam Grant on being a first mover, and he was saying, well, first movers actually aren't the most successful when going onto a new platform or new industry. That stuck with me. For brands, both in HR and marketing, all of the first movers have already been on Snapchat. So what you can do is learn from their mistakes and then be original in your own way. So this is a really, really unique opportunity with Snapchat from an HR perspective.
Well, I feel like we're all smarter and better on Snapchat because of you kind of walking us through this today and talking to us about Gen Z. Where can people go to learn more about you?
Check out my website, www.connorblakely.com. For those of you on Twitter, at Blakely Speaks, spelled the same as my website. And then my email's on my website, and just hit me up. How can I help?
Thank you, Connor, for joining us today. And thank you for listening to the Workology podcast, where we discuss the science and art of the workplace, HR, and recruitment. This is Jessica Miller-Merrill. Until next time, you can visit Blogging for Jobs to listen to all our previous episodes.
Production services for the Workology podcast with Jessica Miller-Merrill provided by TotalPicture.com.